little bit about where we're at in the program so that you guys have a little update. We've had a lot of kids that keep coming in. We keep getting referrals for more kids, which is great. And I've had parents from other churches ask about the program and stuff. I have a child over in Austin that was like, you know what, I might even be willing to drive over just to have that opportunity. So I just think there's so many kids out there that we will continue to have trickle into our program that we may not see yet, but they will be coming. So I am not worried about that. I feel like these kids will come. And it was the volunteers that I was worried about, and I am no longer worried. I'm so happy that we've had such a good response to our requests for volunteers. We want to talk a little bit about how the program is going to work so that you know what we're doing. Right now, I know when we discussed it at church, we talked about doing a once-a-month commitment, and I really want to stand by that because I feel like a lot of people signed up because they had the opportunity to do once a month, so the other days or the other weeks of the month they could go to church, attend church themselves. So we really want to stand by that commitment. So what we're kind of thinking, we have approximately 40 volunteers at this point, and what we'd like to do is divide it up so that we have about 10 people each week. If we continue to go like we're going, we would like to switch over to doing every week, have the classroom open every week, every Sunday. And right now we're not going to do that because our plan is to kind of get this going, but we talked about doing it for a year. We may bump that up to like January. And then what we would do is have each of you sign up for 1 week a month, and probably through like a Google Doc where I would send it out through email. You could sign up for which weekend of the month you are most available for, and then we'd have kind of like teams is what we're thinking. It's like teams of 10 that would do like the first Sunday of every month, a team of 10 that would do the second Sunday of every month, and so you kind of maybe work with the same people each time too, which would be nice. But at this point, Jen is going to send around a sign-up sheet. What we're looking at is Jen and I are kind of getting a little overwhelmed with all of the response and the commitments of this, and we're asking for a little bit of help from you guys. What we would like is to see, Jen has been so good at planning out our curriculum, and we have 2 years of curriculum set up. If we expand our program, we're going to need more help with somebody else helping her with the curriculum. So if you're really good at giving the Bible lesson, if you're really good at music, you don't have to be a great singer, because I'm certainly not, but you all saw me last Sunday at the end trying to sing. So if you're good at that kind of thing, if you're good at arts and crafts, we could use some help with that. Gross motor activities, or even like games and other activities with the kids. We have somebody sign up for some gross motor activities, but more people would be great. So she's going to send out a sign-up sheet. We also want you to sign up for which of the months you can do in the next 6 months at least. So if you know I can be there October 12th, which is next weekend, will be our first one, or I can be there November 9th is the second one. Go ahead and sign up for those days, and then we want to get our 8 or 10 people on each week. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions about the schedule? Okay, and you can always email me, call me. You should have my contact information. If not, let me know and I can get that to you.
The other thing too is if you are being called, if we start this in the month of January, to do more than 1 week, don't get me wrong, we would love just to have your commitment too, but we know that one thing that we think that has attracted a lot of volunteers to this program is the fact of having it be a once-a-month commitment. But I'm really excited to see it grow. So I'm going to pass around this clipboard in a minute. Like Angie had said, looking for somebody to tell the story. I'm more than happy to tell this story, but I know that there's so many talented people that are sitting in this room today too. So know that I would love it if anybody would like to do that. And then if anybody feels led to create an art project or some kind of hands-on fine motor skill project that the kids can work on. And it doesn't even have to be something that they take home. It can be. It could be shaving cream art for the week. It could be something pertaining to our Bible lessons. So this next month, the theme that we're going with is God Made Us, and talking about creation and in the beginning, how God created the heavens and the earth. And so there's so much available online, like through Pinterest and perpetualpreschool.com, that would give you art ideas. And we have all the supplies available here at church. If there's a project you're thinking of for the future, like maybe it's something around Christmas time that you would like to see done, we can get the supplies ordered if church doesn't have it. So know that that's something that if you sign up to be the art or the project leader for the month, that those resources are available. If you do sign up to do one of those after we're done talking tonight, I'll be happy to take you over to the volunteer room to show you where all this amazing arts supplies is available. I'm also asking for somebody to sign up specifically to be an activity leader, meaning working on fine and gross motor skills. It could be playing beanbags with the kids. It could be hula hooping. It could be bringing the big bouncy beach ball up. Just something that is working more on getting some energy going in the class for that day. Nick Strant, he's not here tonight, but he has also volunteered to be a part of that role too. He is a Phi Ed teacher for special needs kids in Stewartville. And then music leader. We do have the man who came and played guitar for us, but if there are people out there, like I said, I know this room is full of so many talents that would like to lead music for the week, that would be something to sign up for too. And then when I filled this out, we weren't quite sure about what our plan was for the long-term vision as far as if we're expanding. So why don't we just plan on if you can sign up between now and the first one in January. So we'll ask for if you want to fill in storyteller, art project leader, activity leader, and music leader. And then on this side, we'll have 6 additional people sign up. And these 6 additional people will probably be more one-on-one with kids as they come in. We also, the other role, if you are feeling led to become more of a team lead, if we do up this program to more than 1 week and a month, at the very end of my sign up, team lead, if Barnabas expands, if you could just write your name down there too. Angie and I both work at the clinic and are on every 3rd weekend, so for us, we cannot commit to be here every weekend. So we are going to have to, if we expand the program, seek somebody else to be able to be the leader. As all that is coordinating the weekend, making sure you have your art project, making sure you have your storyteller, making sure you have the activity and the music, and then you would be the greeter at the door. You'd be the main contact for families as they come in. You would be greeting the kids, sending them to and pairing them up with what other volunteer would be in the room, and then just making sure that the parents have filled out all paperwork that needs to be done.
We would also then, if you would be interested in being the team leader, then we would include you in meetings and stuff that we would have if you were able to come, so that you're on the same page and know how to do all those things too. So, okay, so Jen will hand those around, and then while that is happening, you can all see the agenda on the tables in front of you. We kind of got a lot of things to go over, so we're going to keep moving. And our first person to come and speak is Melinda Harris. Melinda Harris is a physician at Mayo that is going to just go over some of like the basic first aid type things, standard precautions, things that you might need to know about caring for some of these kids as far as the medical aspect. Please, if you have any questions, just raise your hand or shout out or whatever. This is very informal, and we want to make sure we get everybody's comfort level where it should be. I know some of you are probably already in the medical field, so I really hope that you'll learn something from this, and if not, just know you're really appreciated, and we're glad you're here.
Can I say, Linda, I'm sorry, I need to say one more thing. If you are considering the role of storyteller, please know that you don't have to come up with a story on your own. I've actually been given the curriculum that they used to use in Sunday school last year that we can base our work out of. So I have already chosen the topics. All you do is I can show you where these books are held. They're held here at the church, and we can check them out. They're actually ours to use. And there's a story that you can base what you're going to tell your story on. So know that you don't have to make things up from scratch. We have plenty of resources here that are available.
So I was just going to go over some real basic kind of things. It sounds like there's already a medical team that's pretty readily available if anything more serious happens, but just some of the basics in taking care and helping kids that, in the role you're going to have where you're kind of doing a lot of hands-on with the kids that are going to be ministered to in this ministry. So one of the major things I would just emphasize, especially given the fact that it's wintertime, is hand washing. A lot of these kids could have a lot of difficulty if they do get ill during the winter, and may even require hospitalization. And so I would just really emphasize the importance of hand washing in all aspects, hand sanitizer, all of those kinds of things. If you feel sick, if you have a cough or respiratory illness, I guess I would err on the side of really protecting those kids against whatever you have, because some of the kids may be more prone to needing to be hospitalized for the illnesses than others. Other things to think about, if you encounter a child that you're going to get really familiar with these kids, right? So if the child just seems to be having a different kind of day or acting differently, maybe they're just not quite as active as they usually are, and it seems concerning to you, then I would just really keep an eye on those kids, because it could be something else going on underneath, kind of, beyond just being tired or something like that. It could be an illness coming on, or kids who have seizures can sometimes just have a lot of difference in their activity level and that sort of thing prior to having a seizure episode. So you guys will be really familiar with these kids. You'll notice if something is different. Obviously, their parents, before they bring them, will notice something, but in that time period you're with them, may notice a difference in their personality or their activity level. So I would just really pay attention to things like that as well. Obviously, there is a lot of backup here if there is anything that's more concerning. How many people here know the Heimlich maneuver? Okay, great. I don't know if I really need to cover it. So for anybody that didn't raise their hand, the basic idea is if somebody's choking, which these kids certainly could choke on something, some of the children that may be more developmentally delayed may put things into their mouth and that sort of thing and get choked, or food. And so basically what you're going to do is make a fist, put this portion of your fist against the sternum, so the little notch right below the ribs. So everybody feel right below your ribs, right in the middle, there's like a little hole there. You put this part of your hand in that notch, push back and up. So you're going to put this hand over this hand, and then push back and up. Obviously don't do it too hard on yourself right now, but in the event that something happens, that should help. So I would do that a couple of times. Continue trying to get out the object as long as they're choking. I would not stick your hand in anybody's mouth to try to get an object out unless it's directly visualized in the front of their mouth. We don't do blind finger sweeps anymore for anybody that's taken first aid in the past. So don't stick your finger way back in their mouth. If you see it in the front, you can knock it out of the way, but otherwise, if they're choking, do the Heimlich maneuver, and then hopefully the object will come out on its own. Does that make sense? Okay. Is there any specific questions you guys have about any medical issues that may come up? Or I think the biggest thing are just the standard hand washing kind of things. But.
How about, Melinda, if the child has a seizure?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do?
Okay, so Angie's actually going to cover that in a little bit. So
Good question.
that'll be well covered, I'm sure, by Angie in just a little bit about seizures. Anything else non-seizure related? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. So get children that have more complicated lines and tubes and kind of stuff, but in the future you may get those kids. And so sometimes kids with trachs, which are the tube into the neck so that they can breathe, or they can have G-tubes, which is a little tube into their belly so that they eat through the tube. So you may encounter those kids on down the line in the future. The things I would emphasize there are, again, hand washing is the most important thing. Definitely don't be around the kids with the trachs if you have a cold, because those kids end up in the hospital if they get a cold. Kids with trachs sometimes have a lot of secretions and it can be kind of icky around their trach. So I would just, again, protect yourself and your family by washing your hands, wearing gloves per se. There may be kind of those aspects to it. They should have somebody with them that's helping them with those cares. But you guys would be interacting with those kids to a good degree, so I would pay attention to that. If something became dislodged, obviously, we would bring in that would be a good time to call the medical team if their G-tube popped out or something like that. So it's not a huge deal. Those things are easily put back in.
What is the process for getting a hold of the medical team?
Here is a picture.
I'll cover that.
Jordan's going to cover that when we talk about the handbook, but when he does his education too. But there, from the volunteer list that we have, there should be somebody in the classroom every week that has medical training. So one of our other leaders is Sherry Crow, and that you guys haven't met yet. She's in Nepal doing a missionary trip. So she's a pediatric physician. I work in the pediatric ICU as a nurse. I don't know if you guys actually knew that. And then we have a couple other volunteers that are either CRNAs, pediatric nurses. So there's a lot of people that have, Beth has good experience. There's a lot of nurses and physicians within our volunteer group. I don't think we'll ever have a time period where we don't have somebody with medical training. Out of the leaders, even Jen is CPR certified, BLS certified, so if something would happen, one of us would then take over, and then we would help with getting assistance or getting a medical team there. So it shouldn't be up to your, I guess I would emphasize, don't do anything that you don't feel comfortable doing. If a child comes in with a trach and a G-tube and that's not something that you are comfortable with, that you are trained on, don't do it. That parent or nurse or whoever's with that child should stay with them unless there is somebody that could help with that situation. So make sure that we're comfortable and able to care for the child safely before we let that parent go to church. Okay? Good questions.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to all. Okay, great.
Thanks, Linda. So our next thing that we're going to talk about is a little bit about the kids that we're going to get. The ones that we have signed up so far, mostly are autistic children. We've got some Down syndrome children. My son also has epilepsy, so I'll talk about epilepsy. But I want to introduce to you guys Kurt and Beth Herman. And they are two of our volunteers, but they also have an adult son that has autism, so they're automatic experts in autism. So they're just going to come up and tell you a little bit about autism, what the child might look like as they come in, what kind of things you can do to make them comfortable, how to interact with children with autism, and if you have any questions about autistic children and how to handle them or how to deal with them, we do have a specialist on behavioral interventions that's going to talk in a little bit too. Hillary Clark is here. So the behavioral aspect of it will be covered in a little bit, but Kurt and Beth will tell you a little bit about autistic kids, so come on.
I didn't think we'd be like mic'd or anything like this, so I'd rather be sitting at the table with you guys.
Sorry.
So that's okay. So we're Beth and Kurt Herman. We have a 33-year-old son that has Asperger's syndrome, which falls on the autism spectrum scale. And our son, we actually adopted him from the neonatal unit where I worked for many years, and he is quite highly functioning with his Asperger's syndrome. but he definitely has some of the challenges that children with autism face. And so I'm just going to go through some of the things Angie wanted us to cover. So what does autism look like? I think it looks as different as everybody in this room looks. There's really no specific way to think, oh, that person, I bet, is autistic. But what you might notice is some of their odd behaviors, or some of their strange, some of them flap and things like that. I think they often look disheveled because they really don't give a rip what they look like a lot of the times. It's like they don't care. They don't care if their pants don't match their shirt, and it doesn't really matter to them. My son, if given a chance, would wear flannel shirts every day of his life. It wouldn't matter if we were going to a wedding. That's what he's comfortable in. So I think that's one thing you could, maybe they look a little bit disheveled. They have poor eye contact. So even if you think you're trying to, like establish this, bond with them or whatever, it's uncomfortable for them to actually make eye contact at times. Some of them do okay with it, but I'd say the majority of them, it's uncomfortable for them to do eye contact with people. So just, appreciate that, and don't try to interact with them in that manner. That will help them relax, I think, if you don't try to establish that. They often have repetitive behaviors, such as they might like to draw the same thing over and over again, or they might like to talk about the same thing over and over again. And that's one thing that you will find with autistic children, is they will talk better with adults. They'll interact better with adults than they do with their peers. They struggle with things like rules of games. They have a hard time following rules. So usually they choose not to be part of a game, but they love to get to know the coach. Or in our son's case, his best friends in school were the janitors. In fact, the janitors threw him a birthday party one year. That's how much they loved Brett. Because he would often help them clean up the halls. And as he went down the hall, every little bit of paper would go into his pocket. So I saw more love notes come home in his pockets than I even want to think about. And I said, Brett, why don't you just put it in the garbage? No, he's a pack rat. And that's, sometimes they are like that. They have a hard time distinguishing what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. So to him, every piece of paper, every note on the floor at school should be in his pocket. Why, I don't know. I'm sure it has something to do with his comfort level of his surroundings, that sort of thing. But they usually have some kind of an interest, or even, bordering on an obsession that they love to talk about. And my son's obsession has always been the Titanic. So if you want to sit down and listen to somebody for an hour and talk about the Titanic, you will be his best friend. So that's part of the reason why they interact better with adults, because adults will sit there and listen and nod, and the adults are going to get bored, but they're polite enough not to say, I'm really tired of you talking about this subject, let's move on. Because he won't pick up on that, for one thing. They won't pick up on body language. Like when we get bored, our eyes wander, and they don't pick up on that. They will not appreciate that, oh, maybe you've heard enough about the Titanic for one day, but wait till tomorrow, I'll tell you more. I mean, like how many bolts are in it and things like that. So I guess that's another thing to be aware of when you're working with them, is what, I don't think obsession is a good word, but their interest is. And allow them to enjoy their interest, whether it's blocks or coloring or playing with balls, whatever. I think pretty quickly when you work with them, especially one-on-one, you'll very quickly discover what their interests are and what they enjoy doing. As far as other sensory things go, they're really bothered by a lot of noise in the room. So if it's kind of a chaotic room, maybe even going off into a corner would help and sort of create, the barriers of the room just by the corner, the walls. Or maybe we'd even have a small room where if they were really struggling with what was going on in the room, they could, you could take them out to another room and just have like one-on-one story time with them if they're having a tough day, something like that. Kurt, you can jump in here anytime. It's like, we're going to do this together.
I'm going to answer questions.
Okay. Q&A right here. Yeah, they don't like loud noises. Fire alarms used to just physically make my son ill at school. So they would have to warn him ahead of time they were having a fire alarm, and then they would take him out of the school because he just physically couldn't handle the chaos and the noise of the alarm. As far as foods, I think they all, they are going to have their own preference on what kind of foods they like, but I can tell you if I could stake my life on it that Brett would never eat an apple for you. So textures of food can really make a difference. My son likes soft things, predictable things, doesn't like to try new things. We have about 5 things he eats, It's easy to grocery shop. But he's pretty picky on what he'll eat. He might try, a bite of it, but he won't enjoy it. They really, really thrive on routine. So important that when the children come in that they have sort of a routine of, if they always hang their coat here and then they sit here and now we have snack time, I think that's important and I'm sure that's going to be a huge part of how the whole program is set up. If you alter that routine, it can also be very upsetting to them and stressful to them. So routines are also very important.
I would just mention a couple things. I have to talk in this. Do you hear me? They can hear me. Oh, I'm sorry. Like our son, and I think this is probably common with a lot of autistic kids, they don't like interaction with others. I mean, he probably would interact with just one person, but like to try to get him to do group activities, that type of thing. May very well not participate in that. I can remember we used to go to a little church out in the country, and the minister would give a little sermon for the kids right at the beginning of the service for 5 minutes or so, and he would be laying on the floor underneath the pew.
Not Brett, not the minister.
Not the minister. And rolling around and doing all kinds of things like that. And then when the minister, and we were kind of the entire time trying to struggle and get him to sit and listen and that type of thing, which we never did do. I don't think I knew what was going on or heard any of the sermon because I was trying to get him to sit there. And when the minister finished, then he asked questions and he gave all the answers because he knew everything that was going on, even though he wasn't paying any attention. And as far as not liking interaction, when he comes home, he lives in a group home, he comes home on the weekends and he'll come in the house, he'll give Beth a hug and maybe give me a hug, and then he goes directly to his bedroom and he'll lay in his bed and read or play video games or something like that. Just likes to be kind of alone and quiet. If we have a family gathering, typically he'll stay in his room. When it's time to eat, he'll come up and eat with everybody. If you go to a restaurant or something, he'll eat his food, and as soon as he's done, I'll go sit in the car or whatever. Just doesn't like being around a lot of noise and that type of thing. We've had family gatherings in the winter and it's 0 outside, and if there's too much noise in the house, he'll put on his jacket and he'll go outside in the cold just so that he doesn't have to be around the noise. So I think that you'll find that a lot a lot of the autistic kids don't like interacting with others. They'll just pretty much stay by themselves, and it's nice that we have a lot of volunteers because they may just like to spend time one-on-one.
Question?
Yeah.
Will you mention along with that interaction, physical interaction boundaries?
I'm sorry, my hearing's not real good, but did you say something
Yeah.
about boundaries?
If, like, the physical boundaries that we, healthy boundaries that we.
Obviously healthy boundaries, but also, I mean, there's some of the kids that I work with that don't want any
Touching.
touch. No touch, I mean,
Mhm.
I work at an autism center, so I just wanted to.
Yep. They, you know, if you touch their shoulder, they'll shrug off and, yeah.
So whereas other kids like a hug in the morning, some majority.
So I think that'll be a huge part of really getting to know the kids that we're working with and who likes that hug and who maybe likes high five or, you know, something like that. And then on the other hand, there might be children who are overly, not aggressive, is rude, but overly affectionate that I think, you know, we should be aware of that, you know, what is, you know, how do we handle them when they want to come up and, you know, lay on you, you know, and you know, just really creating that healthy boundary with, this is where you'll sit, I'll sit next to you, and, you know, so I think to be aware of that too, and I think you'll get into that more, and another thing to be aware of. Yes.
What's their response to parallel play? In other words, I realize a lot of interactive play may be out with some of them, but in terms of sitting down next to them and sort of doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think for the most part, they'll do okay with parallel play. It could even mean, you know, giving them an extra foot in between, or, you know, kind of giving them their space. And some of them might do fine with interacting, but I think the majority of them, yeah, parallel play would be a great thing. Sorry?
Can you explain
But just when they're playing next to each other, when they're not playing together, but like, you know, this child is playing here with one of the volunteers, and this one's here with a volunteer. Yeah, but not together.
And I think some, you can't be prepared for, we have two sons, and if we were playing catch with the three of us, my autistic son, you'd like, okay, throw the ball to my other son, he'd throw it back to me. Throw the ball to my autistic son, he'll throw the ball over to the fence in the neighbor's yard. They kind of do things, I think a lot of times to see what your reaction might be, or would even, so you really don't know what to expect there quite often.
Sometimes it's a surprise every morning. I found this great quote, and I just thought it kind of summed up. A child that realizes that they're not part of the normal world. It is frightening. It's a frightening world when you realize it is full of people who really have no reason to like you. Usually when one enters Sunday school or preschool, this is discovered. Parents, as much as the autistic child, the parents of the child as much as the autistic child, only want the child to be accepted and appreciated for the special person that they are. And I think that really sums up why we're all here. And as a parent of an autistic child, nothing makes my heart feel better than to have somebody say something nice about my son, because you don't hear it very often. You know, meetings with the school team, you know, the IEPs that we went through every year were really, really tough. And, you know, I remember at the end of one IEP, after 7 teachers had said negative things about Brett, they said, well, don't you have anything to say? I said, yeah, I do. I said, don't ever do this to another parent. I said, at least think of one thing positive to start out the discussion. Because I said, you have just crushed us. And I said, this is our son that we love. And don't do this. So, you know, I think keeping that in mind, and what a great team this is to pull together and really
give your heart to these kids and to these parents. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start passing around my sign-up sheet. You got to ignore, I had it all typed up, but then I was kind of thrown in a loop for a good thing that we may expand this in January, so please forgive that my handwriting at the end, but I'll pass this around, and if you have questions, we can talk about it at the end too.
I'm just going to add a little bit more to Kurt and Beth's talk. You described autism perfectly. You described my son perfectly. He has the autism spectrum also, and a lot of you probably will be working with Tegan, and a lot of the tendencies that you mentioned are things that he does. You know, he flaps, and when he gets excited, his hands go crazy, and some of that physical touch too. I just wanted to mention the physical contact. It's okay for you to say, okay, Tegan, hands down. Don't do that. You know, that's not okay, Tegan, hands down. And that is all right to do that to the kids and tell them in a nice way, or take their hand and just put it down and say, no, Tegan, we don't do that. And you may have to redirect it 100 times, but to continue the consistency of continue to not allow him to do it, I think is very important too. Another thing that you talked about is their oral sensory issues that they may have. Not only will they try to put things in their mouths, but that's something that they need, is that oral input. So it's not always appropriate, and I would try to block that behavior too. So if they're putting toys in their mouth and stuff, I would again just take it out and say, no, that's not how we use it, and show them the correct way to use it, or whatever way that they want to adapt to be using that toy. But I wouldn't let them slobber all over the toys and that kind of thing. I would just redirect that activity too. So if they have their own object that parents say, he likes to have this in his mouth and that's okay, then that's okay. You know, if that's something that they have taught him that that's okay to do, then just so that we know that. The other thing they might try to, with Tegan too, is because of that oral sensory need, might try to stick his mouth on you or try to bite you, and Hillary will probably go over some of that. But so I don't want to.
She will now.
Yeah. I don't want to get on all of your stuff, but sometimes they will try, and again, redirecting that behavior. We don't bite. And turn, either you can gently turn their head, or you can remove yourself. Sometimes it's easier to remove yourself than it is to remove the child. So if they try to bite you, or they try to lean over to put their mouth on you or something, then I would just say, no, Tegan, we do not bite, and move yourself away. Okay? Does that kind of help with that? I know it's really hard because our autistic kids are not going to want that touch or need that touch, but then we have these Down syndrome kids like Miss Madison, if you all met her last week, and she loves that touch, and she wants to hug, and she wants to be right near you and stuff, and that's okay too. It's your comfort and her comfort, so if you feel like she shouldn't be grabbing or whatever, just redirect her too and say, Madison, now we gotta sit nice, we're listening to the story right now, hands in your lap, or however you want to do that. And you can ask her parents too, what words work the best for her to redirect her. With Tegan, hands down works good for him. That's what they use at school, and that's what we do at home, is we always say hands down. Sometimes using those same words even will be more effective. Jay?
What about, do pre-comments work in terms of, now I know that some of the kids I've worked with in the past.
Like
they had their
preparing.
own agenda. And part of our activity was to get on their agenda.
Right.
So what we would sometimes do is to let them know, this is time for our quiet behavior, or this is time to be quiet, or this is a time to listen, or whatever.
Yeah.
Before we started doing the activity, do these kids usually respond to that, or is that, sometimes it might work, sort of thing?
That's right. So Jay's question is if you need to prepare these kids for the next activity, and or if you can prepare them for what's going to come up. And I think that it's always good to prepare a child for what's coming next. With autistic kids too, especially preparing them, just be careful that some of them, if you prepare them too early and you say, we're going to go to the gym, they are up and gone and at that gym. So don't tell them it's time to go to the gym until it's time to go to the gym, because they are very quick to act. But if you say, we're going to have music time next, you can tell the child is starting to get a little disruptive, they're starting to be a little anxious. Preparing them for the next activity is fine. And some of those transitions, if you know transitions are difficult for them, preparing them for that transition, we're going to go to the gym in 5 minutes. You know, if they're capable of understanding time, or if you say, first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. So first we're going to sing this song, and then we're going to go to the gym. You know, if you know that they can understand that type of wording, that would be easier than like 5 minutes for some of those kids. But I think you will really get to know the kids and what they're capable of, and then that will help you figure out how to respond to that. And if you have any questions, always go to your leader. You know, if Jen or I are there, you know, we can help you with some of those things and what. And like I said, we have so many specialists in our room too that you can always ask somebody else too.
One thing I want to mention, they're very literal. So they don't get humor. So like,
They are very literal.
They're literal to the, you know, if you say, we're going to go to the gym in 2 minutes, all right, we should be in the gym right now.
It's 2 minutes,
You know,
let's
so,
go. Yep.
They're going to hold you to it, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the kids I work with, I told him, buddy, I got a frog in my throat. He went, oh no!
Yeah.
How did he get there?
Yeah.
He really thought I had a frog in my throat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just.
They are very literal. Yeah, and they're even, you know, even some of our, my son the other day, he said he has to go to the bathroom, and I said, can you just hold it? And he's like, I'm already holding it, Mom, I can't. I was like, okay. So I want to also go over a little bit about epilepsy. I think that we will have a few kids with epilepsy. I know my son also has epilepsy. So I just want to prepare you. I don't want to teach you how to treat it. You don't have to give any medications. That's not going to be required of you at this during this time. I want you to know how to recognize the symptoms of epilepsy or of a seizure, and then what to do, okay? In those very first 5 to 10 minutes until you get the parents. So the parents will all have pagers, so they'll sign their child in, they'll have a pager, and then if you need help, you'll tell your leader, we'll page the parent, and the parent will come, and then they can treat the child if the child has medications to be given, okay? So seizures, typically, what I say is you're going to get to know these children. Even though some of these autistic children will have flaps and repetitive motions that they'll do, you'll get to know what's a normal repetitive motion for this child and what is an abnormal motion. So anything that they are doing that's repetitive, purposeless, that you wouldn't see them normally do, could be a seizure. People used to think that seizures were you drop down on the floor and you convulse, and that is not the most common type of seizure. The most common type of seizure is where it's like a repetitive movement that a child does. So it might be their thumb rhythmically twitching like this, it might be their arms twitching like this, and their head is kind of going to the side. That would be a seizure, something that they couldn't normally do. So Tegan or Brett is flapping and excited, that's not a seizure. Even though it's kind of repetitive, that's not a seizure. But a child that's doing a repetitive motion or tick like that they can't seem to stop, that's going to be a seizure, okay? With Tegan specifically, when he has his seizures, the most common thing that he does is his eyes will go to the left. He has a brain injury in the right side of his brain. So the way your brain works, if there's an injury on the right side, your left side of your body is affected. If there's an injury on the left side, your right side of your body, it crosses over. So when he has seizures, his eyes will go to the left and they'll stay there. And he cannot bring them back to you. You might be over here going, Tegan, look at me, and he'll turn his whole body to try to look at you, but his eyes will stay to the left. That's his number one sign. If you see that, call us, page us, whatever. Ask one of our other medical experts in the room and see what they think too. But I would rather have a parent call me and I come and check it out and see that it's not a seizure, that's just something he does, than for him to sit there for an hour and have a seizure. So you can always call the parents, and once we get more used to these kids and stuff, we'll be more comfortable. So typically when he'll start like that, and then he may have some of that rhythmic motion too. He might have a thumb twitching or a little cheek twitch or something. But Typically for him, it's just that left eye deviation. Okay, so then what do? If a child does have a seizure, if they have that eye deviation, if they have some twitching, or even if they do fall down and have a full-fledged seizure on the floor, the things that you're going to do as your immediate responding, you will have medical people in the room, so they'll help you, but if for some reason everybody that knows anything about seizures and medical things went to the bathroom, and you're in there with this child, or you're in a different room with a child, I want you to know what to do initially. So unfortunately with seizures, there's not a lot that you can do. It's kind of a helpless feeling. You're going to watch them, make sure that they're safe from harming themselves. So make sure if they're on a concrete floor, you're going to cushion their head. So if their head is hitting the floor or something, you're going to make sure that they're not going to injure themselves further. So cushioning their head or their body. You don't really need to take off any of their clothes or remove anything unless you think it's going to cause injury. So if they have a tight tie on or something and it seems like it's really hurting them, take it off. Otherwise, if their glasses are, take them off. But otherwise, you can just kind of leave them, let the seizure happen. Most kids will come out of the seizure in 5 minutes or less. Tegan will not, most likely. His seizures last very long. So if he has a seizure, I would just have you call Dale or I, and we'll come right away and we'll treat it right away. His seizures typically progress to the point of having to go to the hospital and multiple medications for treatment. So his are more of an emergency. Some of these kids, when they have seizures, they'll come out of it, they'll recover. I would still call their parents, and the parents can take them home. If they're on the ground having a seizure, a lot of them will vomit. So there's a few things that I want you to do. Privacy is a big thing. If they have a full-fledged seizure, they'll probably lose bowel and bladder control. So they may wet their pants. They may, and it might be embarrassing once they wake up and realize what happened. So try to give them some privacy. Keep the other kids away. The kids are going to be confused and wondering what's going on anyway. So try to keep them away. Get a different activity going over here or out of the room, and let that child have some privacy. And then just comfort them, stay by them, never leave a child with a seizure because they could vomit and aspirate. So I always recommend putting them on their side. And if they're on their side, they can throw up off the side and you're not worried about them aspirating. And it also helps with their tongue. Their tongue can flop to the side instead of going in the back of their throat. So if a child is having a seizure, turn them on their side and just stay by them.
And also please protect yourself too. So we have gloves that will be available. So if your child does have emesis or ends up soiling their pants, before you were to clean them up, of course we want to make sure that you have them in a place if they're still seizing before you get up and get gloves that they're at a safe place. But make sure you take those precautions for yourself too, just because we just do.
There's a first aid kit in our classroom. There's a little bookshelf over by the door, and there's a first aid kit in there that should have everything that you need for that initial thing, and gloves. Any questions on seizures? I think that covers it pretty well. Okay. Jen is going to go over a little bit about how to approach these kids as they come into the classroom. So when they come in, whether they're autistic, Down syndrome, whatever, how to talk to them, how to make eye contact or not eye contact, and what things to do.
So what I'm going to share with you today are just some basic things that I use. I work at the Children's Hospital as a child life specialist, and so my job is to help kids cope throughout hospitalization. And in doing this, these are the approaches that I use when walking into a patient's room for the first time, and I think that they will be helpful too. A lot of them I've already heard, so this is probably going to be repeat, and I'm sure that you already do a majority of these things. But first and foremost, I like to remember that why I'm here is for the kid, for the child. And so when I'm walking into a patient's room, I acknowledge the child first. And how I do that is by making eye contact directly with that child. And so as our kids are coming into Barnabas, zone your eyes on their eyes so they know that, wow, you have been waiting for them to enter into this room, make them feel special. So look at them, smile at them, and I strongly suggest to not do a fast approach. I always give kids some space so they can figure out who I am, and I can do a quick assessment and figure out who they are. And by doing this, if I saw a child approaching me, I would say hi and look at them, greet them, and then say, my name is Jen. Can you tell me what yours is? If the child is, let's say, a 5-year-old, I will do that by getting down at their eye level like this to let them know that I'm here, I'm there just for them. And then the next thing that I usually say when I'm in a patient's room is, tell me who's here with you today. And if the child is able to verbalize, then they can, introduce their mom or say, this is my mom, this is my dad. If the child is not able to verbalize, then I say, it looks like you must have brought your mom and dad with you today. Is that what you did? And even if that child is nonverbal, I'm still going to talk to them like they completely understand every word that I'm saying. Because some of the times we don't even know how much these kids can truly interpret. And so I would rather that I'm talking to someone who maybe can't understand anything. I don't care. I'm still going to do it because I'm still going to treat them like I would want to be treated if I were in that situation. So eye contact, slow approach, and then my voice, my tone of voice. I'm going to try so hard because I get so excited to not be so loud and not be so excited, but yet sound like I'm being gentle and sincere too. And then when I can see how that child's going to respond, maybe the child's going to start crying, and if I were to enter a patient's room and the child cries, I actually take a couple steps back, letting them know that I'm not coming in at them. And same thing with some of these kids that come. If they're not comfortable right away, we can give them as much time as they need to feel comfortable being in our environment. And so just assessment is such a key. Check to see if they're making eye contact with you. If they're being shy, I might say, it's okay if you don't want to talk right now. I'm going to talk to mom and dad right now to find out a little bit more about you. But I'm still keeping the focus directly on the child. Or I'll say, I can see right now, it might not be a good time for you to be, or I can see right now you might not want to talk, or you're choosing not to talk right now, and that's okay. So not making the child feel bad, not making them be embarrassed because maybe they can't talk, but just recognizing and acknowledging that that's how they're choosing to be in that state. I always let the child make the choice. So, we were talking about parallel play. I may think I have the coolest art project picked out for these kids for the week, and it's Noah's Ark with all these cool animals we're going to put in the ark, and the kids will turn it into, or a child may turn it into a complete project that is great for their imagination. It's okay. Let's let these kids just have control of things. The more control they have, because they've had so much taken away with them, especially when it comes to an art project, I'm completely okay with that. So if you are playing beanbags and you know that it takes 5 points to win, if the child makes it to 2 and they think they're a winner, then they're a winner. And so that's part of our program, and what we want to do too is encourage these kids, no matter what state or how much they win or whatever project they come up to, just offer that child praise. We're here to show them God's love, and we're here to show them that this week at Kids Club, we've been studying and talking about creativity, that God has created each one of us to be creative, and that goes for every individual. And I even think of some of these kids with special needs and how creative they can be. And it may not be in a way that I'm able to exhibit my creativity, but man, they have so much that's inside of them that they can be creative with too. So I've already heard it mentioned, let's keep routines constant. We are going to try to have exactly what we do follow the same pattern every week. So as soon as the kids come, they're going to gather and they're going to play for a while. And then we're going to move to a story and prayer time. And then we're going to move to an art project time, to snack time, and we'll have this all written out for you, back to playtime. But that way the kids can predict exactly what's going to happen next. So we'll keep those consistencies and routines available. And then be flexible and be adaptable. I think one of the highlights for me when we had our first meeting was when we were about to pray, and who was it? Dylan. He said, "And thank you for Taco Bell." I loved it because I love the fact that these kids also can feel so comfortable being in this type of environment that they feel like they can share and say what's on their heart. And it wasn't that I wasn't going to tell Dylan we weren't going to pray, but I acknowledged, and Taco Bell, Dylan, we'll be thankful for Taco Bell, just because that's what was on his mind. And so even though you may have a plan of, okay, we're going to do this next, it might not be what happens. So just be patient, because eventually you'll get to what needs to be done next. And then just, like I said before, offer as much praise as you can for the kids. If you see, like, Tegan, you're doing such a good job sitting still right now, or thank you, Tegan, for being such a good listener, just complimenting them and offering them praise with constructive things. As we heard before, it might not be something that, unfortunately, they hear so often, but we all know that these kids are amazing. So it's just kind of some things that I do when I walk into a hospital setting. Sitting on the tables, there are these books. It's a pocket guide to special needs. If you're still feeling like, I'm not 100% comfortable with my approach in working with these kids and so forth, I know Hillary's going to cover a lot of this too, but this is a great resource. Talks about making quick assessments, and then it goes through and talks about defining the disabilities, whether it's developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, learning disabilities, the autism spectrum, Down syndrome, epilepsy, children in wheelchairs, sensory integration, hearing impaired, visually impaired, CP, muscular dystrophy. Gives a brief description of what the disability is, and then it talks about things that you can be doing with these kids. These were donated to us, and please, you are welcome to take these home with you. I know we don't have enough for everybody to have, but do know that they're available for you. The only thing we ask is that you just return it on one of the Sundays that we have Barnabas, so we can be giving them to other people who may want to read up on this stuff too. I think one of my favorite things was, when I was reading through this, was when they were discussing about children in wheelchairs. And they actually said that, hey, bring a wheelchair up to your class and let other kids test it out. And then it said, avoid the idea that a wheelchair is a symbol of a disability. Rather, it's equipment to help the child feel dependent. And so, sticking away from the negative, the disabled part of it, but how it makes the child able, I thought was a really good reminder for all of us. So anyways, I just wanted to share that this was available for you too.
Thanks, Jen. She has some really good tips. You guys, I know it's late at night and you're tired from your long day, again, thank you so much for being here. If you want to go get some more Apple Crisp or a drink, please stand up if you need to stretch, go to the bathroom, whatever. I understand this is kind of a long day for you, but we are going to move in and we'll keep going. We'll try to get this done even early if we can. And Hillary Clark is here as, she's a behavioral specialist you're still through the school, right? Through the school system. So she has done some amazing things when working with Tegan and a lot of other kids. So she's going to help us just go over some of, if you see certain behaviors with these kids and what you need to do or what you can do to keep yourself safe and to keep the child safe. Hillary also just had surgery, and I thank you so much for coming. I know it was hard.
That's okay. I haven't worked for a month and a half, so this
But
is my
you're
work.
here.
I know. See, I feel like I'm tapping into my work roots.
Do you want to sit down, or are you more comfortable?
You know what? I'm okay. I get a lot of sit in my day. You know, I'll sit if I need to, but I'm all right for a little bit. I'm good. Thank you. I'm loud, so I don't think I need to be too close to this, but just let me know. And I'm extremely informal, so holler up questions. I'm going to talk quickly, and behavior is a huge topic. So if you have specific things that you want to know, or kids that you know who have questions that will come, make sure that you ask those. I will use Tegan, Angie, and I talked. Tegan's kind of my example, just because I know that's one of the kids you'll participate with. And I've worked with Tegan for a long time. Two things I really want to talk about are self-injurious behaviors, as well as looking at disobedience versus ill will intent kind of an idea. Self-injurious behaviors, and this is when I think of Tegan. For Tegan, I haven't worked with Tegan for a year. Is he still doing the head? Okay. So for Tegan, it looks a lot like head banging, and for a lot of kids, head banging is a self-injurious behavior, in that they could do it hard enough that they would injure their brain or injure their head. Other behaviors, I know some of the other kids that have been in the program, scratching until they bleed, picking your nails, kids that pick their nose until it bleeds. I mean, there's a lot of different things. Sometimes looks pretty scary. So when she talked about seizures, it's the same kind of thing. Obviously, we would need to be physically present. If there's any bodily fluids, you need to protect yourself. Make sure you put gloves on while we're doing any cleanup or working with kids. But really, it's a lot about figuring out why do kids do what they do. Tegan has two different kinds of head banging, and one is I'm frustrated and I'm going to head bang, and that's typically he's on the floor and he's hitting the back of his head. Another one he might hit with his hand, or he might just sit there, and I've worked with him a lot, and he'll just sit there and do this and bang his head, and they have very different purposes. If he's leaning forward and just doing it, it's kind of a sensory thing where it feels good. And a lot of little kids do this, like toddler age, if they crawl around and they love to rub their forehead on stuff. It doesn't really excite me, but I have two nephews who love it. And when they were little, they'd be like, "Auntie, do my forehead." And I'm like, that's weird. But for some people, it's just an absolute sensory thing, and he has learned it over time. Now it's just a behavior. It's just what I do to fill up space and time in the day. So I don't want you to think that anytime a kid goes like this, oh my goodness, they're headbanging and I need to protect them so they don't injure themselves. So just watch it. It has different purpose. Obviously, a headbang while I'm screaming and yelling and on the floor and I'm flailing looks a lot like a tantrum. It has a very different purpose. For Tegan, it's very hard to stop him because now we're going to be in a physical battle. So my goal is to protect him and protect his head, which means I might grab for a pillow or a cushion and put that underneath him and let the behavior play itself out. A kid who's scratching to the point of bleeding, distraction is a great thing. A lot of times with higher functioning kids, they're doing things, sometimes it's attention seeking. It may have worked for them one time when they were 3 years old, and they scratched until they bled, and grandma gave them a cookie. And that is now the behavior they do for the rest of their life because they know it is hardwired. Grandma might give me a cookie. Are we at grandma's house? No. Do we have any cookies? Probably not. But that is still their goal for the behavior. And so they scratch, and that has its function to it, is that they're hoping they're going to get something good. And even if I don't get grandma's cookie, I might get loves and hugs and other things. So it's learned this function that kind of connects to it. So you'll watch it and you'll see different kids will have it different ways. Picking the nose, scratching, things like that, easy distraction. Find something that they really do like. Listening to you talk about your son and his special interest, the Titanic. That's a great time. If I know, and I'll tell you, I got a handful of kids who know Titanic stuff. Crazy amounts of information. And they have that like picture book with like all the how many people if you laid them on their heads, and I've seen it all. Titanic, Thomas the Train is big. What are those little cards? What are those cards? There you go, Pokemon cards. But parents will tell you, and you can ask a lot of kids, what are they interested in? And those are the times you want to pull on those things and kind of just say, hey, you know what? Tell me 2 facts about Titanic. And if I say 2 facts, I have set the parameter of the conversation. We are not going Titanic all day long. That doesn't mean he may not want to talk Titanic all day long, but I've set the parameter of the conversation that, you know what, we only have time for 2. So some of the kids that you have in there, possibly Dylan, loves to ask questions. Maybe you only get to ask 2 questions. and then we're gonna move on to the next topic. And that's priming kids and giving them kind of a parameter because they want to just keep talking about it and talking about it. And they love talking about it with adults because we do. We have very good social skills. And so we tolerate a lot of what kids bring into the conversation piece. So the self-injury, some kids self-injure for pure frustration. And that is, I'm uncomfortable, look at the setting, look at what we're demanding of them, those kinds of things, and see where we can change. It doesn't necessarily mean if I say, you know what, we're coloring a project today, and if I hit my head, then I know next week when we say we're going to do a project, I hit my head. Now I've just taught you all how I don't do projects. And so you kind of have to play with how do I distract you, how do I encourage you. There's that balance in there of how do I get this, because we do want kids to participate. We also want to give kids lots of control to enjoy themselves. This is a special, special time for them to come, and so we want to make sure that we are open to what they're bringing to the table, and it's not just an adult-centered and adult-driven kind of a program. Disobedience, oh mercy. This is so hard. And I love having this conversation. Typically I'm talking in the public school, so now I can talk outside of public school and all of the rules and the regulations that we deal with and all of that stuff. But disobedience looks like anything that we typically say. If I say to my son, you can't have a cookie, and he's 2 years old and he looks me in the eye and he takes a cookie, I say, that's disobedience. And I have framed what disobedience looks like. And if I take somebody with special needs, a kid with autism or Down syndrome, different neurotypical neuro abilities or cognitive abilities, and I have that exact same interaction, what they are categorizing, or what I'm categorizing as disobedience, a lot of kids don't have the ability for ill will and ill intent. Most kids on the autism spectrum do not have the executive functioning skills in order to manipulate. Therefore, what we have categorized, and you see little kids do things, we go, oh, that's disobedience. What we have categorized as a general public as disobedience is not, it's just a behavior. It's just something that they do. And it might be because they didn't process the information yet. A lot of kids process much slower than we would a neurotypical kid. So if I say, we're gonna have cookies in 2 minutes, or I say you can only have 1 and they've already eaten 2, I'm thinking, well, you can't have any more. But they haven't put that piece together yet because they're still processing the things that are going on. And they don't have to just process the words. They process what's going on, they process the smell and all of the other senses. All of that comes together in processing. Just like when we transition, somebody asked a question about priming kids, where you give them information, we're gonna do this next, or these are the rules when we go sit down at the table, this is what we're gonna do. Priming is so important because it helps kids get to that transition. It's very, very hard to, if I'm loving the train right now, and you say, okay guys, we gotta go move to this, and our adult timeline is 30 seconds, 2 minutes, and their kid timeline is, but I love this toy, and I don't wanna stop, and I don't have this toy at home either, so I wanna play it even more while I'm here. It's how do we get kids to transition that, and that's where we see a lot of what we would consider disobedience. I said we're coming to the table and kids don't get to the table, and we have to give them that time. So priming is really important, allowing for them to process the information, and if we think they've moved on to something different that is not what we asked them to do, and we still, and so we think that they processed it and they're just ignoring our request, that we need to restate it in the exact same way we stated it the first time. And my rule of thumb for a directive is really 5 words or less. If we want kids to process what we're saying, I can't give them the whole long, but if you don't do it today and we'll come back next week and then you're gonna do it and then I'll put it right here on the shelf and all this, they have lost it on, you told me I had to stop. And so we need to be really careful that our directives are exactly what I want you to do in really simple sentence. And then in 2 minutes, if I need to restate it, I'm coming back to my exact same 5 words. I'm not going back into a flowery thing. I'm not going into, but I told you, or 2 minutes ago, or we said this. I'm just restating the exact same thing. Sometimes I need to do a physical prompt or just come be close to kids. Put your arm around them. If they're okay, some kids touch is good, some kids touch. You're gonna know that real quick. And a lot of what we learn with kids, I mean, you guys are experts on your children because we've screwed up a lot. And you go, that wasn't the right way. And you go, whoo, and then you go, we're never, ever, 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 ever never doing that again. And that's true.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed in the past is that there are some children who are so tuned into tone in your voice, or so tuned into the emotion of your voice,
Yeah,
that they can't hear what you're saying.
that's right.
They just hear what you're feeling.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that, yes, that applies to teenagers as well, and even kids who are going to be teenagers real soon. Sorry. But that's very, very true, and so it's really important when we give those 5 words and we give that directive, and I'm not saying if you say 6 words, you've lost it, but work on being simplistic in what you want. Hands down, super, that's exactly what I want you to do, not hands down so you don't hurt me, just hands down. Just hands down. And that other piece comes, and a lot, these kids get programming so much of their day. We don't have to, everything isn't a super huge, big teachable moment. Some hands down just works. Yeah, I think you're right. Yep. I'm trying to put it all together, how to lace it in just a few minutes. But it is important that we try to simplify those transitions in a calm voice, which is just, you know what, it's time to come to the table. And even if I'm in 30 minutes, it's time to come to the table. Or I've probably changed our plan. I don't know if you're going to do schedules or visuals or how much you're going to get into that. Visuals are great, even if you're pointing or you just bring a clock or point to your watch. Those are objects that they know and they recognize that are not influenced by human emotion. The watch is the watch is the watch. The watch keeps time, and it doesn't matter if I'm happy or sad, the watch is keeping time. And so that's a great way to say, you know what, it's time, and I can just keep referencing it's time and what it is that we're supposed to be doing. Let's see. Hardly ever disobedient. Priming is really important. Don't really have, I could talk all day, or I could talk not so much at all. That's just tricky. Other things, thinking about biting behaviors when they are injurious to the adult or toward the person that is next to them. Our first inclination is obviously to say no, don't. Different families sway different ways on whether or not their kid says no. Obviously, our focus wants to be on what do we want them to do. If somebody is hurting somebody, it is important to say stop. I think that really is, that's fair, that's a socially acceptable thing to say, is stop, and then you quick follow up with what do you want them to do. You can go back later and say, you know what, that hurts. Some people, instead of saying stop, yell ouch. And when I say yell, I just mean you've changed your tone to ouch, and not screaming it so the whole world comes tumbling down. And again with stop, it's just changing from my calm tone, my polite tone, to a more firm, definitive, directive tone. Obviously, we're not yelling at children, but making sure that kids know, and then sometimes we have to physically intervene. I know a lot of kids that have Down syndrome love to hug, and they might hug too tight and squeeze people, or hug somebody who has sensory issues and doesn't want that touch at all. And from that, we can base some rules and say, next time, we don't hug here, or you need to ask first, or whatever it is that the rule's going to be, and then we keep reminding of the rule. But obviously, if somebody's hugging somebody too tight, we want to intervene and say, you know what, oops, that might hurt, and then you can help them with their arms to get them off. And a lot of kids with Down syndrome are very open because they want to please you, that they're not looking, and again, don't really have that ability to be blatantly manipulative and disobedient. Kids who are trying to bite you, just a quick super tip, is that you don't ever want to pull away from a bite because skin tears and it hurts, and it requires lots of stitches. And so if someone were to try to bite you on your forearm, which is an easy place to bite because we reach in front of kids all the time trying to help them do things, we reach over to get pens and papers and all these things, and if somebody does, you want to feed into the bite and then quickly pull it away. It's a little bit, and I hate to make this analogy, but it's perfect. If you play fetch with your dog to get the tennis ball out of their mouth, you feed into it a little bit and then you pull it out because it releases the back of the jaw. Not that our children are dogs by any means. But I don't know that you have biters. Kids, again, for that self-interest, lots of kids bite themselves right here. Lots of good, juicy skin right there. And parents can tell you if they have biters, kind of give you a heads up so you know what you're looking for. So a kid who just goes like this because they have some juice right there versus a kid who you know they have a tendency to bite, because we don't want to make a big deal if there isn't a big deal to be made.
I think it's good though, because Dylan did bite the day before church last week, bit his mom, and his mom had a huge bruise. So I think knowing how to
Yep.
respond to that is
Yep.
a good thing.
And it comes over time with just protecting yourself, and don't reach in front of kids. If I'm sitting at a table and I know the paper's over there, if there's somebody over there, I might say, can you pass me the crayons? Or I might walk my body around the table instead of reaching over kids, because if I have somebody who I know is just, and it's a sensory thing, my arm might smell different, might look different. That's a great way, toddlers do it. That's how we find out the world, is we put our mouths on it. And so, again, some kids bite just because it's there. It's not necessarily a thought through, I want to hurt you because I don't want to be here. It's just an impulsive response. And so make sure that you give a little feed into it and pull away quickly. Soap and water immediately. Ice if you need it. And you have medical people. So if it breaks the skin, you're good. Any specific questions? Yeah.
I have what's called the universal grandfather gene.
Okay.
So kids tend to crawl into my lap when I'm sitting on the floor.
That's so awesome, though.
And in this setting, is that necessarily bad?
I don't know if it's bad as a general rule. I like to try to make sure we're doing things that are socially acceptable at all times. And so if it's an 8th grader, wherever they're functioning, does it look socially acceptable to have an 8th grader sitting on your lap? And is the family okay with it? So if you do it with your own grandkids and you're comfortable with it and it looks socially acceptable, I think we have to be careful, just because kids may like Barney, that we don't fill their world with that kind of stuff when they're 18 years old, even though because then they're walking down, walking through church carrying Barneys, and people go, why does that big kid have Barney? So just kind of whatever feels socially acceptable. Anything else? All right, that was super quick. Thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. She's obviously an expert. I wrote down a couple things as she was talking. I don't know if you guys know, but she does work through our buddy system. So, there's the Hands of Christ program that kind of covers both areas. We have the Barnabas classroom, and then there's the buddy system. We're going to kind of work together with the buddy system, and Hillary does that. So she's paired up with a child and helps with some of the behavioral things in the actual classroom, the Sunday school classroom. There may be times where somebody mentioned if a child leaves and runs out of our room or wants to leave our room, what do you do? Go with them, obviously, keep them safe, and try to redirect them back to our room. Some of these kids might be overwhelmed, as they were mentioning about the sounds, the noises, the environment. That first week was very loud. There was a ton of people. It's not going to be like that every week, but our kids actually handled it very, very well. Nobody ran out crying or anything like that, so that was good. And we did talk about that prior to that week. We knew it was going to be overwhelming for some of our autistic kids, but they did very well. If a child would leave, though, follow them, keep them safe, try to redirect them. If you're unable to redirect them, just stay with them, and hopefully at some point you can get them back, or you can ask somebody to help you. And then we can always call their parents and have them come and help if we really can't get them back into the classroom.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What room is this being held in?
It's the Maninka room, which is upstairs on the 2nd floor, and as you're going down the hallway, the church offices are on your right. Our Barnabas classroom is to the left through the double doors, and then it's kind of in the corner.
Is there, and I'm just thinking from experience. Is there a fire alarm up there close?
Jordan is shaking his head no.
I'm just curious because I know that for some autistic kids
It can be very, yes, I know. Tegan just had a fire drill at his class the other day, and his teacher's like, he did not like that. I said, I have no doubt he didn't. So I don't know where the nearest one is. It out in the hallway?
It's over by the reception desk.
Okay, okay. Which is, it would be hard to hear that from there,
Well,
but
and I guess I'm just thinking also if a kid would
pull it.
run away and hold the
Sure,
alarm.
sure.
It's been made less accessible.
Yeah.
in the last year.
And there should be somebody at that reception desk.
It's not very
loud. I've heard it. I was in the nursery once and we didn't know what it was.
Really?
So I
Okay.
don't think it's very loud. I don't want to say that because Jordan, don't change it. We like it.
A couple of the other things that I thought of as Hillary was speaking, we will have pictures of each child. So when they come into our classroom, they will be able to take their picture, and then we have a little slipboard that they can take their picture over and put it in there showing that they are here, they are present, and this is where my picture goes. A lot of kids use that kind of programming in school, so we're going to try to maintain some of that for them, that they'll bring their picture and they'll put it in. And that first day we took some of the kids' picture. I don't know if we got all of them, but we did get some of the kids' pictures that we'll have printed off ready for them.
We also took their pictures with their parents, and so if you have a child that's feeling sad during our Sunday school, you can walk right over to that board and talk about how mom and dad are going to be here very soon.
If you got the possibility of making a little portfolio for each child, just like their likes and dislikes, or don't touch them here, don't,
Yep.
practice, or
So we have a questionnaire that each parent will fill out. That's all of their likes, dislikes, things like that. That we'll hand them as we accept these children into the program. They'll fill that out as a front and back piece of paper. Jen can hand it around so you can see what it looks like. And it'll say things like, what are things that make your child upset, and what can we do to make them, feel better, and that kind of stuff. So we'll have all that information, and you guys are obviously welcome to read through them. If you're working with a child, we'll let you read through it so that you know exactly what to expect. And then we'll each get to know these kids as they continue to come to the program. Good question, though. The other thing that Hillary mentioned is positive interactions versus negative interactions with the kids. So I guess, I don't know if I've learned this over time or if it's just, I try to stay very positive when I talk to my son. So if he is grabbing at me or something, I could say no a million times a day, and it's really not going to have any effect on him because he hears no all he'll hear no all the time. And what does that mean? I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. So I don't even really use no. If he's grabbing at my shirt, I'll redirect it into a positive and say, Tegan, we use our hands for this, or we use our hands for that, or or give them a chip and say, oh, do you want a chip? Here's your chip. Put that in your hand, and instead of saying, Tegan, no, don't grab my shirt, no, because he's like, what's no?
Or it looks like you really want to grab something right now. So I'm going to find this ball that you can grab. So instead of saying, no, you can't grab my shirt, you're acknowledging that the child wants to do that behavior.
Want something in their hand, or
Yes, you can do that behavior, but then redirect it to where they can.
right. Another one might be if they're biting you, instead of saying no biting, you can say mouths are for eating, and then just change the direction and get something else. Distraction would work the best.
It looks like you really want to bite me right now.
Yeah. However, let's give you a fish cracker. The other example I want to use is Madison on the first week was getting kind of upset. She didn't want to leave, which I think is a great thing. I was very excited that she was so happy and had so much fun that day. She was the last one in the classroom. After all the volunteers, everybody had left, and there's Madison and her parents. They couldn't get her out of the classroom. She wanted to stay. So I could tell she was starting to escalate a little bit. She was starting to get angry, and her parents were getting a little frustrated, like, Madison, we have to go. It's time for lunch. Let's go. And she wasn't having it. So I remembered from the beginning of that day, her parents said that she really likes to help with things. She likes a task. She likes to help you. So I came up to Madison and kind of interrupted and said, Madison, I really need your help. I can't find Dylan's bag. He forgot his bag. Can you help me find it? And she right away was like, looking around for that bag, and I'm like, oh, I think it's over there. Can you grab it for me? Let's go see if we can catch Dylan. And her mom just looked at me and was like, thank you. And she grabbed that bag, she came out, she handed it to Dylan, and they left very successfully. So trying to play on some of those things that those kids, that you heard them say they're good at or that they like Madison likes to help. So if she's starting to escalate into a behavior, get her a task, get her something that she can help you with. And then she'll be happy, you'll be happy, and you carry on.
And once we get into all this too, like if we can establish these teams per month, there might be a specific child that you just work really well and you really click with them, that we will try to keep consistency for them too, and knowing that, hey, you know, this is a good fit, so one-on-one next time you're with this child. The hard part right now is doing the once a month thing. It's just going to be a hard transition sometimes for these kids because they get in the groove, but then they're not back for 30 some more days. So it'll be exciting when we can do it monthly or weekly.
Absolutely. Just we are staying right on schedule actually. So Jordan is up next, and Jordan is going to talk a little bit about our church policies, and he's going to go over that handbook. So if you don't already have a handbook in front of you or one to share, there's more back on the table. Grab one, and he's going to kind of review that and then have you sign that paper. So if you also don't have one of those papers to sign, we'll grab one of those too, or raise your hand and I can get you one.